That's an overview of the Pagelines site options. The next Pagelines menu is labeled Page Options. This label is a little misleading because these settings really concern the different types of sections that are, by default, assigned to the special purpose pages that you see here. I'm not going to go over these because rather than setting up site-wide defaults, I think it's more practical to handle these types of pages on a page-by-page basis. The important thing here is that you can configure these special purpose pages individually. Now let's look at what's labeled as drag and drop on the menu, but the page title says Template Setup, which is really a more accurate description. This is the core of Pagelines. It's really flexible and powerful, but it can be confusing. I'll try to give you a flavor of how it's set up and how it works. Here in this top part, you see a block diagram of the major sections on a typical page: the header, page content, what Pagelines calls the more foot, and the footer. So the first step in this process is to select which of these templates you want to set up. Then you go down to this bottom part and arrange the different Pagelines sections that you want to assign to that template. As depicted here, we have the header selected, and the sections that are now active in the header are the branding, the nav bar, and the secondary nav. Let's say we don't want to have the secondary nav section here, so we can just grab it, drag it, and drop it in the available or disabled area. If I wanted to add a section to the header, like the breadcrumbs, we just reverse the process and drag it from the inactive to the active area. And of course the header appears the same across all pages. Now let's look at the page template setup, which is a little more complicated. With page template selected, another window slides open to reveal a dozen different types of pages, including the 6 special purpose pages and 6 general use pages. What we see now is the setup for the default page, which includes only one active section, the content. Now let's look at template 1. As soon as we select this template, you can see the active sections here include features and boxes in addition to the page content. Again, if we don't have a need for boxes on this particular page template, we just drag it over to the inactive section. Now here's another complication. This content here is a section, like the other available sections, but it's also a container in that it in itself can be configured with different sections. To configure sections within the content section, come back up to the Select Template area and click on Content area here on the right. Note that Template 1 is still selected, and now in the active section we have the post loop, or the basic WordPress post and page routine. Just as an example, now let's add the comments section, and you can see how you can reorder these sections within the active area. But we need to remember that for template 1, this content section actually includes more than just the standard post loop. Now let's look at the more foot template, which in Pagelines is a defined area between the content and the footer that, like the header and footer, appear on all pages by default. I should point out, however, that each of these section selections that we define here in the templates can be turned off on a page-by-page basis. We'll see that demonstrated when we look at the features. The more foot area is currently empty. Let's drag and drop the more foot sidebar section into the active area. The footer template setup is like the more foot. It comes with the simple nav section active. But I want to remove that and replace it with the footer columns sidebar that will give us a variable number of columns in the footer that will be populated by widgets. The last section template to show is the sidebar. In this case, the primary sidebar is displayed, but we can add the secondary sidebar. Again, this establishes the sidebar configuration on every page, but it can be hidden on individual pages. That completes the tour of the Pagelines settings, but before I set up the demonstration of features, I want to make a change here to the template and illustrate how the nested nature of the content area works. Template 1 is what I'm going to use to demo the features, but as we currently have it set up, here's how the page is structured. We have the features section listed above the content section, so it will appear full width above the content and the sidebar. This isn't what I want. What I want is for the features slider to appear within the content area with the sidebar to the right. So I need to go back to the template setup area and make a couple of changes. First, I'm going to drag the features out of the active area at the page template level. Then I'll select the content area here on the right, which opens the content section below. Now I'll drag the features into the content section. I'll put it under the post loop in case I want to provide some text above the feature slider. And I'm going to get rid of the comment section. Now we're ready to go set up the features page. First, we'll create a new page and apply the template, Template 1. You need to update and save the page at this point because the page meta settings that will appear below depend on which template is selected. You can see that we can now manage the page setup and the feature setup on this page. As we scroll down, you can see that we can turn off or hide any of the defined sections on this specific page, and we can change the background for this page. Let's look at the live page now before we've done any real work. What we can see is our page title, the introductory text, and the default placeholder features. And you can see that the features are not full width, they're contained within the content area, which is what we want. Now let's make it like we want. There's no prescribed workflow for editing or adding features, but here's what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to create a new feature set, or a collection of the features I want to appear on this particular page. This is like creating a new category for WordPress posts. I'm going to call this set Test. Now I'm going to add 4 features to the set. To create a feature, you just name it, add your text, select how you want the text to appear with the image, then upload the image. If you want to have an active link from the feature to a specific page or post, you can assign that link in link description. In this case, I'll just use a dummy address, then save the settings. I'll go through the same process now with the second feature. But as I do, I notice that I forgot to tell the first feature which feature set to use. So when I finish, I'm going to go back to the feature number 1 and make sure I check the box for the test feature set, and then publish it. Now I'll create 2 more features with different settings quickly. Before we look at the live page, here's our list of features where we can make sure that we have the right text, images, and feature sets selected. And here's our live page. Right off the bat, we can see some issues. First, feature 4 shouldn't be displayed first. Second, the indicator buttons show there are 5 features when there should be only 4. And the slides aren't sliding. So let's go back into the page editor and see what we forgot to do in our original setup. Down in the feature setup area, we forgot to assign the test feature set to this page. We also didn't set the navigation mode. The default that we saw used numbers, but let's change that to just squares or dots. And since we only have 4 features to show, I'll set the max number to 4. Coming on down, I need to set the transition effect to fade, the timeout, which really means how long each feature is displayed, to 3500 milliseconds or 3.5 seconds. And the transition speed, or duration of the transition, I'll set to 750 milliseconds or 3/4 of a second. Finally, I'll check the box to show the pause and play button. So I'll save these settings, and now let's look at the live site. When I reload the page, you can see that the 5 numbers have changed to 4 dots, which is good. We have the play and pause button, and the images are rotating, but they're still out of order. The easiest way to control the order of features and other Pagelines sections like boxes is to use the Post Order Types plugin. This is one of the plugins that Pagelines is designed to integrate smoothly with. After installing and activating this plugin, you can see that now there's a new option under Features to reorder. That gives me a list of all the features, and I can reorder the ones I want with the one I want to appear first at the top. I have to update to save the order, and after I refresh the live page, the features appear like we want. To demonstrate boxes, I'm just going to use the default boxes that come with Pagelines. I've created a page using template 2 that's set up for both a carousel and boxes. I'm going to hide the carousel and set up the boxes to show 2 in a row and a total of 3. Here's what that looks like. If I wanted to show all 3 boxes in one row, I just go back to the page editor and set the number of boxes in a row to 3, update, and then refresh the live page. The last thing to point out about boxes is this very last item. Since there are a lot of variables you might want to define in terms of how your boxes appear, Pagelines provides a place here where you can call out a custom CSS class that will apply to your boxes. The class would be defined in the custom code area, a child theme, or the Pagelines Customize plugin. And that completes the tour of Pagelines features and boxes. To wrap up this overview of Pagelines Framework, I want to return to the Pagelines website and show the 2 primary sources of support the company offers to their customers. Based on my 2-year experience with them, the most useful support they provide is the forum, or discussion board. They have a handful of Pageline pros who are paid to moderate the forum and assist users. For the most part, I found this service helpful. I'm going to search for references to features, and you can see the kinds of problems that arise on the forum. One of the most frustrating things is that the Pageline pros have to walk a fine and arbitrary line between solving problems and providing free consulting. Many of the questions that begin, "How do I?" involve modifying the CSS or PHP code. Sometimes the pro will provide the specific code modification, while sometimes another pro will just give a general bromide and apologize that, "Well, I can't design your site for you." This wouldn't be so frustrating if their actual documentation was adequate. In my estimation, it's not. It may look nice, but too much of it simply documents the obvious and doesn't address the kinds of questions that real users have. I recognize, however, that's a judgment call on my part. In summary, the Pagelines framework is considered in the top tier of the WordPress frameworks. It packs a lot of features and functionality into its core program and offers relatively easy ways to modify and customize. To make use of these features and functionality requires a solid, maybe even above average, competency with WordPress, and it's certainly beneficial to know HTML and CSS. Pagelines isn't cheap, starting at a minimum cost of about $140, but in terms of getting what you pay for, it's probably fair value. And there is full-time support that's available via the online forum and the IFI documentation. The bottom line for me is that I've chosen to continue using it for 2 years and haven't really felt compelled to consider any other frameworks.